Hello, everybody, and welcome. We have Terry and Robin Chumbley from Czech Republic, although right now they are in the state of Texas. Shout out to all the Texans that are watching. If you're out there, post in the chat. Let us know you're watching from that state. So we have a great hour coming up, and if you have questions, we want to hear them. If we have moved on to another subject matter, please still ask your questions. We will go right back to it. We can all three of us can see your question in the chat. So welcome everyone who has just stepped in and joined us. So Terry and Robin, let's start with an easy question. You in an article that I saw online at Howard Payne University, you did a beautiful description, or the writer did a beautiful description of what the Czech Republic looked like, to the point that I could actually visualize it. But where are your favorite places to hang out in the Czech Republic, and why?
Want to go first?
Well, I think my favorite things to do are just to walk downtown and see all the old buildings and walk across the Charles Bridge, especially in the evening, so you can see the lights and all of that. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, there's so much of the country that we haven't seen. We live in Prague, which is the capital. It's the largest city by far. We've made a few trips in the city, but it's just, in the country, but it's just a beautiful rolling hills, small mountains, farms. It really is a beautiful city, a beautiful country. And then you get into Prague and it's just this, massive city of immigrants and foreigners, and hustle and bustle and busy. But like Robin said, it's just really enjoyable just to go walk around the city and see the history, enjoy the sights. It seems that everybody knows about Prague now. And, when we first moved there in 2007, you could actually get out in the evening and walk around, and there was an off season of tourists, but neither of those things are true anymore. There's always tourists. It's always busy, but it's still a beautiful city, and one that we've lived there almost 19 years, and one we still get out and walk around in and just go, wow. Just an incredibly beautiful city with such a rich Christian heritage. It's evident, in the statues, in the architecture, in the things you can see. But, the country's just completely lost that connection with their Christian heritage.
I've heard that a lot about the European area, that is, in spite of its historic Christian roots, it seems a little lost at times. Tell me, let's start with some personal questions. We always hear about all the great things that are happening in ministry when our global workers visit our churches. But our audience usually likes to also hear the testimony. So how did you both become believers, and when did your faith become your own?
Well, when I was 6th grade, so I don't know how old you are in 6th grade anymore. 12.
Me neither. Don't ask me.
Yeah.
I attended an Awana program, and other than going to Sunday school with my grandmother and my great grandmother, the Awana program really, I think, helped me to understand that I was lost and that I needed a savior and what that meant. And I remember one night after Awana's, praying the prayer, God, I'm a sinner and please save me. And then as I went through, growing up in high school, there were times that I was much more, close, on fire. You go to camp and you learn some new things, and you spend a week really, really growing, and then you go back to school and you kind of get back in your routine. But in college is when I feel like I really decided that, yes, this is my faith. It's not just what I heard somewhere else or what somebody else believes. It's real, and God has a hold of me, and I want to pursue him.
Yeah. And I grew up in a Christian home. My grandfather was a pastor. My great grandfather was a pastor. My great great grandfather was a pastor. But
wow,
fortunately, my dad broke the cycle and became a professor, an educator. So I grew up in a Christian home. We were always at church every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Sunday night, every event that you could imagine. But kind of like Robin, I really didn't understand what being a Christian was until I was in university. We met at the same university, Howard Payne University here in Brownwood, Texas, where one of our sons is currently a senior. But, while there, it really became evident to me that I really didn't know Jesus. I really didn't know who he was. I didn't understand the process of salvation. And so it was, in dorm room 417 in Jennings Hall there at, Howard Payne, that I really gave my life to Christ at that time.
And you even remembered the number
I
of
do.
the room.
I remember it very, very well, very, very vividly.
And
Yes.
I don't know how old I was.
So you had some early missions and ministry involvement. In fact, I was rather, it made me smile when I saw in the article that, Robin, you had a clown ministry.
Yeah, of all people.
I know.
Well, hey, you're not alone, because I was one of those too. I had a clown thing going on too. So I was totally happy to see that somebody had thought of that. But anyway, and of course, Terry, you had some involvement in mission stuff. So for both of you, what was the process of you serving overseas and realizing the Lord's call in your lives?
Yeah, we actually also became closer as in our relationship, and actually became a couple through the missions team at Howard Payne. It was called the BSU then, right? The Baptist Student Union. I think they're called BSMs now. But we were both on the missions committee team. She was clown ministry, and I was more evangelical development, missions development. And we became prayer partners as part of that team. And through that prayer partner relationship, we became a little bit closer, and eventually got married. But now I forgot the question. What was the question?
How'd we end up overseas?
Oh, how'd we end up overseas? There we go. That's a good one. But through that, we both felt this call and draw to missions. And she'd spent the time in Australia one summer while she was at university. I spent some time in South Africa after we were married doing some mission work. We always felt kind of called to missions, but we didn't really know what it was going to be, because I wasn't going to seminary. I'm not a pastor. My background actually in university was corporate finance and accounting. Her background was education originally. So we always kind of felt this call and this draw to missions, but we didn't really fit the profile, of those going overseas. And so we were actually living in Waco, Texas at the time. We had 4 children, I think, at the time.
I was pregnant with number 5.
She was pregnant with number 5, and really felt the Lord calling us to serve overseas in education, Christian education. And it took a lot of conversations with the mission pastor at the church, and because I was ready to go tomorrow, and she was a little bit more reluctant with 4 little kids and a one on the way. And so it was kind of a long process of really praying and discerning and understanding what the Lord was really leading us to do. And so we moved to Prague in January of 2007 to serve at the Christian International School of Prague. It was started by a group of missionary families who really were struggling with finding educational options for their kids. The national schools were very difficult, shame-based models, rote memory, of course, very atheistic. They didn't want that. They didn't really feel called, all of them, to homeschool individually. So they kind of started this school as a co-op. And Robin and I moved there in 2007 to kind of help this school get started. And it just celebrated its 21st year this year. So that's kind of how we started 20 years ago. Yes.
Great. So why WorldVenture?
That's not quite as dramatic a story as some of the others, but we knew where we were going and we knew what we were going to do, but we were told we needed a mission agency. And there was a family in Prague that had 5 children. He was the pastor of the church there, the International Church of Prague. We had 5 children. We were about to move to Prague, so we thought we need to talk to this couple. So we talked to the couple and felt they really spoke highly of WorldVenture and the support they received and the help in transition and equipping them to be a family of 7. We eventually became a family of 8, but it was because of their recommendation, their suggestion, and just the great things they had to say about WorldVenture that we ended up with WorldVenture.
Awesome. So the question I have for you, Robin, this is for all our homeschooling families out there. You might be interested to hear this answer. So, Robin, tell me, what were the challenges of homeschooling overseas?
Curriculum was one of the biggest challenges because, I was moving to a country where English was not the language and I was homeschooling in English. But thankfully, at the time, you could media mail curriculum and books for like $1 a pound. So we shipped over, I don't know,
A lot of books.
a lot, probably 6 bags, maybe more, of books and curriculum.
A lot of books, yeah.
And then I think part of it, one of the reasons that we ended up in Prague was because the school where Terry was going to be working was very supportive of homeschooling families. So I had that as kind of a support, but even still, I was an oddball. Our family was a little weird. My husband was teaching at a school, but our kids weren't attending the school full time. We had chosen to homeschool. Why would we do that? So I think sometimes just feeling alone and isolated in our choices for our family, but it was also during that time we had some other things, and we did a lot of moving in a short period of time with our family, and I feel like the homeschooling also created a stability.
Yeah.
It was something that even if we were in a different house in a different country, that was the same.
Right.
And I think that was helpful. So
yeah, that consistency was just a good anchor for the kids. Amongst all the changes and trials, they knew that was going to be the one constant thing that they were going to do together as a family. So yeah, that was a big plus.
And so if we have like some homeschooling families out there or parents out there who want to serve in missions, what kind of encouragement would you give them?
I would say, if you feel like God's calling you to homeschool and you feel like God's calling you to work overseas, God's going to give you the grace that you need to make it each day in whatever the challenges are. And I'd say go for it. I mean, I feel like that we have great kids, and it's not because Terry and I were great parents, but because of the grace of God, who supported us in all the things he asked us to do. So I think it's doable. Yes, it's hard, but life is hard, and there's just going to be challenges. And then, later on, Terry can tell you about the ministry that we're working with now, who will support you on the field as a homeschooler.
Sure we do.
And we'll share the information on those services as well later on in this live stream. In fact, just before we head into our next questions, as the new people come in, I want to remind everyone, you can ask questions in the chat. You can make comments. We would love to hear from you. It's a great encouragement to our guests as well as to me. So let's dig a little deeper into ministry. A lot of times on our ministry profiles on different workers, we see the word TCK. We see that on some of our colleagues' social media platforms. What is TCK? Stands for Third Culture Kid. So what makes up a TCK, and what obstacles do they face?
Yeah, that's a great question. A TCK, Third Culture Kid, is generally described as a child who spent the predominant years of their youth growing up outside the passport country of their parents. So we typically call the first culture is the passport country that mom and dad grew up in, or countries that mom and dad grew up in. The second culture is the host country where you're currently living. And so the third culture is kind of that not necessarily a mixture of those, but kind of a separate culture that says, look, I don't really feel at home in mom and dad's passport country. I don't really feel at home in our host country because I didn't grow up here, but I have a lot more in common with other kids like me that don't feel connected with mom and dad's passport country or our host country. And so like we worked at the school, Christian International School of Prague, for 13 years, which was made up of primarily TCKs. Our kids are TCKs. You know, our kids all have American passports. They were all born in the States, but they've lived the majority of their life in Czech Republic. So when they come back to the U.S., they kind of understand some, you know, internet, social media has helped a lot there, but they're not really American at their core. And they didn't grow up in Czech Republic, so they don't really feel at home as a Czech. But in the school was made up of 30 to 60 countries, depending on the time of year. And those kids all had more in common with each other and became best friends and lifelong friends because of that commonality of being a TCK. You know, our kids' best friends are French, Ukrainian, Czech, Slovakian. I mean, you name it, but they don't see each other as you're Czech, you're French, you're Ukrainian. You're like me, you're a TCK. You're someone that's grown up overseas, outside their passport country, and doesn't necessarily fit in their host country. And so that tends to lend itself with some great benefits. I mean, the opportunities to get to know someone from other cultures, to learn more about their culture, to become close friends with them. It's a huge plus, just opening up to a broader worldview of what's happening, you know, the events in the world. But some of the challenges that come with that are definitely challenges. We just did, I worked with Share Education Services, which we'll talk about in a minute, but we just did a lot of training on what are the challenges and what are the positive things that TCKs deal with. And TCK training did some research, and they came up with these what they call ACEs and PACEs or PACEs. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. What are those things that are really impacting our TCKs adversely? Those things that create great difficulty. Some of it has to do with constant transition, the constant goodbyes, instability, absence of parents, bullying, isolation, and that tends to lend to itself to a lot of anxiety and depression that we see really increasing in our TCKs. But of course, the PACEs, or the positive childhood experiences, the alternative version of that, are you know, these experiences they get to have of meeting new people, seeing new sights, having a broader worldview, understanding things, developing closer relationships, particularly with adults. And the biggest one they found in that research is that the one contributing factor that helps our TCKs the most, in particular our MKs, has to do with another adult speaking truth into their life, another mentor, someone else that can come alongside them and encourage them and love them. Because many of our TCKs live in isolation, as far as they don't have a large Christian community. They may not have a church group to be a part of. And so mom and dad are speaking into their lives, but it's that outside influence, that outside mentor that can speak truth in their lives that is making the greatest impact that we see in our TCK. So while there are challenges, and we can't run away from those, we are seeing an increase in anxiety and depression in our TCKs. There are ways that we can deal with that. And it's great through that research that we can find new ways to help our TCKs not just survive, but really thrive living overseas.
Awesome. So are TCKs just missionary kids?
No, TCKs is a big umbrella. We tend to work a lot more with missionary kids, but TCKs can be missionary kids. They can be embassy kids. They can be those who work in business, as we see, you know, business sectors really grow globally. They can be in NGOs, non-government organizations, even military kids. You know, we tend to not think about them because most of them live on a base that is pretty much America. You know, they have their own school, but there are many of our military personnel who don't necessarily live on a base that do have to integrate into the communities and would be labeled as TCKs.
Thank you. So in your history of ministry, you transitioned from an international school in the Czech Republic to Share after what we call home assignment, which home assignment is when a worker comes back from overseas and visits partner churches. It's not a vacation. It's just reconnecting with people again. Can you tell us about that process? What Share is, who it's for, what do you do with Share, and why the change of direction?
Yeah. Well, it was about 2019. We had a conversation about, going forward. What does the future really look for us here? At that time, I was the director of the school. I had been director for about 6 years. And we really just felt the Lord telling us it's time to step away from this role. But there wasn't a next. There wasn't anything to go to. It was just time to step away from this role, which is really unsettling, especially for me, to not have that next thing to go to. So we resigned in December of 2019. We told the board. Of course, then the spring of 2020 hit and everything kind of went haywire. But we knew we were leaving. And so we closed up that school year, as chaotic as it was, online like everybody else did. And then we moved back to the States. We came back to Texas in the summer of 2020. Again, not knowing what was next. We kind of had some ideas. We had talked to Share. We'd been a part of Share. We had utilized their services as a family. I had utilized their services as the head of school. And so we had some preliminary talks. But of course, then when March 2020 hit, everything just became unstable. Those talks didn't continue. But we came back to the States in the summer of 2020. And really, and honestly, in retrospect, and I think we can both agree, it was probably the best thing that ever happened, was not having that next. It was really a great time for us to rest. It was a great time for us to spend together as family, to kind of reconnect, even though we were on lockdown and there were limited things we could do. It really was just an incredible time for us as a family in that summer of 2020. And then towards the end of the summer and in the fall, conversations with Share started back up. And eventually the president at the time and the president of the board reached out and said, hey, we'd love for you to come on as vice president of Share, with the intention of you taking the role of president when the current president steps down. And Share was established actually 30 years ago, and WorldVenture, our CBI at the time, was really a key component in the establishment of Share. There was a mission conference, and I think it was in Wheaton, and the conversation was about missions and how things were looking globally. Again, this was 30 years ago. And there was a lunch, as I've heard the story, there was a lunch where a lot of the heads of ministry were talking as they were having their meal, talking about the challenges they had, talking about keeping global workers on the field, talking about finances, talking about, conflict with other global workers, which tends to still be some issues. But the one that kept resonating was the challenges of families finding support, educational support for their children, because we struggle with the thought of what options do they have out there, which right now there are a lot more options than even we had when we came on the field 20 years ago. But then there were very limited options, and you either went to national school or you maybe homeschooled if you could or felt called to do so. But a lot of the families were leaving because of those educational challenges. And it hasn't changed as far as why global workers leave the field today. Educational challenges of kids is still one of the top 2 or 3 reasons that families leave the field. And so Share was established from that meeting. This group said, look, we can't tackle this individually as organizations. It's just too big an issue that we can't fund and find the personnel ourselves. Why don't we come together and start an organization that can help each of our organizations deal with this issue? So Share Education Services was kind of born from that meeting in Wheaton 30 years ago. The headquarters was established in Budapest, Hungary. And what we do is simply support TCK families with educational issues. We do everything from academic testing. We do transition work with kids, coming to the field, leaving the field. We host conferences. We do 3 to 4 conferences a year around the globe where families can come and really just be a family. One of the nice things about it is you come to a Share conference, you're not Joe Smith, president of XYZ ministry. You're just dad or you're just husband, and you come to one of our 5-day conferences, and we have a children's program where the kids spend a week of instruction in a classroom setting, and we teach, history and science and math, and they really work on some particular challenges, academically. We do academic testing for those kids. It can be everything as simple as achievement testing to as advanced as psychoeducational assessments. We have a speech language pathologist there, occupational therapist, a doctor, medical doctor, to work with the kids. We have a teen program at the conferences. The teen program focuses more on spiritual development with the teens. We have a great group that work with the teens as well. We have adult workshops where they can learn about, homeschooling, educational options, any of those challenges that come with a plenary speaker and time of worship. We have a ladies' tea. We have a men's event. What else do we? I mean, there's opportunities to swim, hike, play, just sleep if you want to. But it's just really a great week, families to come together and really get some support and encouragement. One of the things that I felt the most benefit from it, I knew going to the Share conference that it was going to be about education, but it was just great being around all those families that are that are like us, the like-minded people, that had really heeded the call and gone overseas and were dealing with some challenges and we could pray for one another and encourage one another. And to me, that was kind of a real boost. It kind of filled my bucket during the week of moving forward. And we found that to be a great encouragement to our family. But we also do, we go to agency conferences. So WorldVenture has a conference coming up pretty soon, and we'll have some Share staff there that'll do some workshops, talk about educational options, a little bit about what we're seeing in the future with education, how AI is going to play into education. We'll do some testing if we need to there, do some consultations with families. Families can reach out to us anytime for consultations, and any of our specialists will be able to consult with them. And we're just really here to serve families, particularly with educational questions and concerns. We have what we call Share for Young Children. It's a group of ladies right now that really focus on helping families with 0 to 5-year-olds and making sure that they're getting all the support they need and they can answer any questions. One of the ladies is a licensed registered nurse, so she can help. We have 3 on staff that are certified through ASQ, which is called Ages and Stages Questionnaire. So you can kind of see, is my child progressing at the rate they should be? We have what's called a Career Direct program for those that are about to exit high school. And they can kind of take this assessment that's done by Crown Ministry. So not only does it really take in what your aptitude and what your interest and what your skill level is, but they also want to know, they also answer the question about, well, where is my, what is my, not more values? How do my values fit into this? Can I fulfill this role and still stay within the value structure that I have committed? So Career Direct is another thing that we offer. What am I forgetting?
No.
We're continuously growing. We do some virtual conferences. We actually have a virtual conference coming up in September that just focuses on supplementing English for those kids in a national school. So if you're a mom or dad and your child is in national school and you want to help supplement their English curriculum or instruction based upon trying to get them into an English-speaking university, if that's your desire, we have a conference, a virtual conference coming up in September. There's about 20 workshops in that over 2 nights. You can join it live and have interaction like this, or you can watch the recordings later. We also have our live face-to-face family education conferences in Greece in the first week of November. And we are almost full. That conference registration opened June 1st, and we're just about full.
That's great.
So if you have any interest in being a part of that conference, we'll have 300 people at that. We have a conference in Hungary in March of 2026. The first week of March 2026, there'll be about 350 to 400 people at that one. And then we have one planned in Almaty, Kazakhstan at the end of March, one in Western Europe, most likely Madrid in the summer of 2026. And then we have Greece again. We have Hungary and Greece every year. And then we have Greece again in November of 2026. And then 2027, we'll be back on our rotation to the Middle East. We hope to have one in Amman, Jordan, in the spring of 2027. So
you're not busy at all.
No, not at all. We do a lot of travel, lots and lots of travel. It's been a crazy 6 months, but we love what we do. We benefited from Share. I mean, it greatly benefited our family. And we saw how it impacted us, and we know how it impacts many other families. We hear story after story after story of those who've been a part of Share that just said, you know what, we really were at wit's end. We really were, our only option was to leave the field until we found you guys and got the support we needed so that we could stay on the field and still feel like that our kids were getting the educational support that they needed. So, again, we benefited from it, and we certainly love to see families be a part of it.
So what I loved was the fact that you guys benefited from Share services, and now you're pouring right back into that. So that, and I love that. And I love the fact that you're helping to keep our global workers in the field, so that families could be serving. It's great. So what other ministries are you currently serving in besides that?
Well, I mean, it's not really beside that, I guess.
Are involved with that. Everything is like blended.
I mean, I still, even though Terry's not working officially at the school or anything, I still volunteer sometimes up there doing different things. And this last semester, I tutored a student who was struggling. And again, it was one of those situations. I talked to the mom just recently, and she was asking about would I be willing to do it again next year? Because if they can't get the help that they need for their child, then they're not, it's going to be too hard to stay. They're not going to be able to stay. They're going to have to go where they can get the support that their child needs. And so I love to be able to do those kinds of things and see the impact that it has. So that's what I'm doing right now, and finishing up raising.
Yeah, she's still a mom.
Kids.
Yeah, we still have two at home. We have 5 boys and a girl, and 4 of our boys are in the States now. We're actually here close to our oldest son. He and his wife just had twin boys, and we met them Monday for the first time.
Oh, congratulations.
So, thank you. They have 4 now. They have 3 boys and a girl. And then our other 3 boys are kind of scattered around. And then we still have 2 that live at home. One, our 5th son, is at university in Prague, but our daughter, number 6 in there, is going to be a senior this year. So Robin still homeschools her. And again, she's the beneficiary of all these educational options because she does some online school. She does some homeschool stuff with Robin. She goes to CISP, the Christian International School of Prague, part-time to take some classes. So the options have really opened up for our families educational wise. And we love to support and help make those decisions. If you've got any questions about what's best for your child, we can certainly help you in that regard. As far as what other ministries, I've been doing a men's Bible study on Saturday morning pretty much since we moved to Prague 19 years ago. And honestly, it was kind of started out of a selfish desire to spend some time with men because I was at the school, and while I love working with all the female teachers, I needed some time with guys. And so we started meeting on early Saturday mornings at a coffee shop just so we could pray for and have Bible study and encourage each other. And we still meet, and it's so great because I think, actually, I know I'm the only American in the group now. I mean, that wasn't true when we started, but now I'm the only American that shows up each Saturday. And it's just great to spend time with these guys from different cultural backgrounds, but also different theological backgrounds. And some of the conversations we have and the times that we can pray for each other are just, I miss it when I'm away. I'm glad to be here to see the kids and the grandkids, but I do miss those guys on Saturday mornings.
I bet. So tell me, as we think of the Czech Republic, and we touched upon it a little bit in the beginning of our live stream, but tell us about what the spiritual landscape of the Czech Republic and the different people you encounter through ministry.
Yeah, it's dark. and not just in the winter. I mean, spiritually, it's very, very dark. You know, as we mentioned at the beginning, it has such a strong Christian heritage. You know, Jan Hus is still a national hero in the Protestant Reformation, but it's really kind of lost that connotation to his heroism. They just worship him more as a rebel than anything else. But there's such a deep history there of Christianity and just the richness of churches and the buildings, but it's completely gone. And it is a very dark place, and it's kind of a culture. The Czechs are very much, I like to say they're a lot kind of like Texans. They don't like being told what to do because they've been told what to do so long. You know, they were really kind of beaten down by the Habsburg Empire, and then they've got their independence for a very short period of time before the Nazi invasion and then communism. And so they just feel like, you know, don't tell me what to do. And they see the church as very oppressive. They see it as somebody telling them what to do, what they can and can't do. And they just rebel against that. And so spiritual climate is dark. So much so, two really odd things. One of them I just saw the other day. There was a graphic that showed the fastest growing religions in each country in Europe. I need to find it again because it's really hard to explain this. But in Czech Republic, the fastest growing religion is called Jediism, where they worship the Jedi Knights of Star Wars. That's the fastest growing religion in the country.
Wow.
Less than 1% claim any affiliation with any kind of evangelical church or practice. And if you want to buy a Bible and you go to one of the larger bookstores, you have to go to the science fiction section to find the Bible. It's in the science fiction section.
Whoa.
So that should give you a little idea about the spiritual climate. It is very dark. What we are seeing, though, even within our church, we go to an English-speaking church. It's an international church, and it's one of the largest, if not the largest, in the entire country. And we're seeing if there's any area of growth, and I'm not talking about an explosion, but I'm talking about a slow incremental growth, is we're seeing a growth of Europeans, Czechs in particular, in that 25 to 35-year-old range that are starting to come back to the church. You know, they've been told you can find all the answers to life's problems through education. You know, so they go to university, they get their master's degree, they get their doctorates, they're very well educated. But then they end up coming into the church and saying, you know what, I did all of that they told me to do. And not only did it not answer those important life questions, it just led me to more questions that I need answered. And so we're finding them to come back to the church very, very slowly, but it is happening. And so we are seeing that growth happen. So you can continue to pray for the churches in Czech Republic that are really struggling, and really pray for that revival, that movement, that we can kind of see building some traction, but it is very, very slow. And I think that's why we see a lot of missionary families or global working families or church planners, whatever you want to call them. We see a lot of them leave the field because it does take a long time. It is a very long process of building relationships. And either the families don't have the patience to do it, or oftentimes it's those in the States that are saying, you know, you're just not making traction. You're just not progressing at the rate we expected you to, because we want you to transplant what we did in the US in Prague, and we want to see the same results. And they're just not seeing it, and they're getting burned out and they're leaving. And it's really sad. It's really hard to see all that, all those financial resources, all that time, all that preparation, all that language study, to see families come, and within 2 or 3 years, they're gone and they're hurt and they're burnt out, and they're just beaten down. So you can certainly pray for the churches of Czech Republic.
Wow, I had no idea about that. And that Jediism, that's a first I've heard on these interviews.
Hopefully it's the last.
Yeah, that would be good. So tell me, with all that we've heard, what opportunities exist for people to serve in the Czech Republic or other European countries through HERE or the ministries that you observe that you're involved in?
Well, the school can always use teachers. You know, they really struggle getting teachers to teach at the Christian International School of Prague. So if you're an educator or a young recent graduate of university and you'd love to come work overseas, it's a great place to go. Small classes, great kids. It's just a wonderful place to serve and make a huge impact. We don't often think about the fact that you get those kids for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Wow, what an incredible opportunity to really speak truth into their lives and be a model and be a mentor to them. I mean, it's just an incredible opportunity to minister. With Share, we're always looking for help in a lot of ways. We've seen an incredible growth over the last couple of years in needs. We desperately need someone who is a children's team leader. We need someone to join Share that is experienced with writing some curriculum, elementary school curriculum, and is good at teaching volunteers how to teach that curriculum. So we desperately need somebody to be a children's team leader. So if you know of anyone who's qualified that would be interested in serving that capacity, they wouldn't have to move overseas. It wouldn't have to be full-time. It would be a considerable amount of time, but it wouldn't have to be full-time. I'd love to talk to them about being our children's team leader. We're looking for a conference coordinator, someone who loves working out those details and helping us establish the conferences, pulling all the pieces together and having it work seamlessly. And of course, we're always looking for educational specialists, ed psychs, diagnosticians, looking for occupational therapists. We would love to have those people on staff to help our families as well. So we have a lot of those on staff, but they're starting to get ready for retirement, and we need to start replacing some of those roles. So we'd love to talk to you about serving with Share in that capacity. Serving at CISP, we'd love to talk to you about teaching there. And of course, there's always needs in Czech Republic as far as just church development. There are a lot of young churches. When we first moved to Prague, I think there were 2 churches that we knew of, 2 English-speaking churches, and now there's probably 12 to 14, which is great, because we're seeing a lot of foreigners move into Prague, and English is kind of that stable language that most of them speak. So we're seeing those churches grow, but they need some support. They need some youth ministry people. They need some music people. So there's a lot of needs in Czech as far as church planning opportunities.
Thank you. Yeah. So if you want to talk to them about those opportunities, if you go to their ministry profile, their email is listed on their ministry profile. You can scan the QR code there, or you can go to our chat and you can go ahead and click on that link and find their email. If you're interested in serving outside of Share or whatnot, you can go to worldventure.com/go and apply. This is not applying to commit to something. This is just to get some details out of the way so you can talk to a mobilizer and be directed back to the Chumbleys on that. So if you like to do that, you can do that. And keep them in prayer. Keep the Czech Republic in prayer, as they had mentioned before. For those of you who just joined, basically it's a dark place. So tell me, we recently had a guest on our platform who talked about what a person needs to thrive in a different culture. And what have you learned in your time overseas that you can pass on to others about thriving in a different culture overseas?
You know what I'm thinking?
You go ahead and talk. I'll think while you talk.
I would say, when we first came, we came on, I don't know what it was called then, but it was a 2-year term. Midterm. Yeah. We came what was called midtermer. So we came for a 2-year commitment. And then we had not been in Czech, but just a couple of months when one of our sons was diagnosed with cancer. He was 3. He just turned 3 when we moved to Prague, and was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma. So we came back to the U.S. and he went through a 1.5 years of cancer treatment, all the good stuff that goes with that. It was really, really tough 1.5 years. But then he was deemed cancer-free. We moved back to Czech Republic in October of that next year and have been there ever since. But just coming in that 2-year term, we knew that we were just going to be there 2 years. We knew that we were working at an English-speaking school. We knew that we were attending an English-speaking church. And so we really made a little attempt to language study. And then when we left and came back, we kind of got thrown right back into where we were before we left. And busy at the school, busy with church, busy with life with 6 kids. And we really didn't focus a lot on language study. And I think if there's any one regret that we have is that our Czech language skills are horrible. Fortunately, we live in Prague where, even if we try to speak Czech and our broken ability, they just kind of go, hey, let's just speak English because my English is a lot better than your Czech. So we do end up speaking a lot of English, and our ministry is primarily in English. But I would really say if we had to go back and do it over, I would probably focus a lot more on Czech language to make it a little bit easier for us to function in the culture. Yeah, that'd be my one thing.
I think for me, being the stay-at-home mom with all the little kids when we first moved over, it was really important for me to find a friend or get involved in a group of ladies kind of living the same kind of life. And so that there was a ladies' Bible study, and that was a really good way for me to have support outside of being at home all the time. And then I also, I just asked a lady that I met, and I was like, hey, do you drink coffee? And she said, no, but my husband does. And I was like, I don't want to drink coffee with your husband. I said, can we just meet, once a week in the evenings when my husband's home to take care of the kids, and just talk. It doesn't need to be a Bible study. It doesn't need to be we're going to pray for each other kind of time. I just need to talk to an adult. And so that for me helped me survive and thrive when we were first on the field. I have a lot more freedom now with older kids to be involved in things that helps me not to feel so isolated. But yeah, that was one of the big things when we first moved there, was just finding someone that I could just, talk to about whatever, being a mom, being a wife, living overseas, all of those things.
Yeah. And I think finding time for rest and for each other is vitally important. I know that there's this guilt that kind of comes along with, if I take some time off, am I not being a good steward of my time and the funds that have been provided for me? We had a colleague who one year did her newsletter, and she put pictures of her holiday in there. And she really was surprised at how many people wrote and said, hey, I don't want pictures of your holiday. I want pictures of you in ministry. And it was kind of hard to think, it's okay to take a holiday in the roles that we have. And not only is it okay, it's imperative that we take some time to take a break and refresh and renew, whatever that looks like, because it can be daunting. It can be overwhelming, and you can really get beat up if you don't take that time for a renewal with a spouse, a spiritual renewal on your own, or just some rest, just to get away from, whatever your day-to-day routine is and break it up a little bit. I think that's very, very important.
I think it's interesting because with the U.S. audience, it's not uncommon for a congregation to encourage their pastor on a sabbatical and stuff. But when it comes to global workers, it's not quite the same because they're supportive, they pray, but they forget that like in the U.S., our global workers who are pastors or teachers or whatnot, they need the same kind of rest as our pastors in the U.S. do. So, yeah. So as you've been working in ministry, how many years has it been?
We moved to Prague almost 19 years ago, 18 and a half years.
So in 18 and a half years, share like one or two stories, maybe one story, how you have seen God act in amazing ways.
Oh, that's a good one. One story, one or two stories. Do you have one off the?
I don't know. I think pick one from the school, just the impact that the school.
Yeah, we can go back.
Kids and
go back to when we first came to the school. We had a couple of families there that weren't believers. Actually, one of the families were ambassadors from Indonesia, and part of the Indonesian ambassador package, I guess you had to pay for your children's own school. And so we'd often get a lot of those families come to the Christian International School of Prague because it was affordable because the teachers are all global workers. And so there's no salary. It was in English, number two. So people really like to have that English instruction. And number three, whether you were a believer or not, we would actually have families say, hey, I'm not a believer like you, but I want my kids to have that moral foundation, that foundation value that I see in your faith. And so we would get some families. This family, the ambassador of Indonesia, a very devout Muslim family, put their children in our school. And we weren't secretive about it. We were the Christian International School of Prague. So it wasn't like we were hiding who we were. But during that tenure of that young man being a part of our school, he became a Christian, was very leery to tell mom and dad, but did. Their assignment was, I think, 5 years in Prague. They had to go back to Indonesia. He had to serve mandatory military service in Indonesia. Part of that mandatory military service was to take the Quran, study the Quran as one of his classes. And he said, I can't do that. And nobody had ever said that before. And so he really kind of stood up for what he believed in, and they didn't know how to handle him. Now, his dad by that time was pretty high up in government. And so it was because of him that they really kind of changed that. And you no longer have to take the study of Quran in the Indonesian military, is my understanding, because this young man stood up for his beliefs and said, I can't do that. That's not what I believe. So that was just a real encouragement to us, as a school. I think at Share, I don't know that there's like one particular family, a story that we can tell, but I'm always amazed. Every year we do a conference evaluation, and the evaluation is always about, the same questions. What do we do well? What can we do better? What do you want to share about your experience at the conference? And when I fill out evaluations, I'll be honest, I don't take a lot of time. I like to click the buttons and I like to be done with it. But I'm always amazed when the families fill out the Share evaluation. The last question is that, what would you like to share with us of how Share has impacted you? And just the long stories that come from that about, well, a year ago we were getting ready to leave and we found out about this conference, and we came a year ago and we found the tools needed for our son to actually begin learning and thriving in school. And it's been a profound impact. And now we're telling everybody else. And so this year we came back because we brought 2 other families that are having some struggles. I mean, it's just those things, those stories that just come year after year, conference after conference, different family after different family. It's just really encouraging and just really kind of keeps us going.
Yeah, that feedback is a treasure. You hope you get it, you ask for it, but the real treasure is when you don't ask for it and
That's right.
they put in all that effort and work to type out, because like you said, I'm the same way. If I get
Yeah.
something like that, I'm just like really quickly, and I'm in social media.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
really quickly and I'm done. So that is a real treasure when you get that.
It
Um,
is.
so what is your support at right now?
We are hovering around 85%, I think, of support. We've been there for quite a while, kind of hanging in that area, which obviously we would love for it to be at 100%, but we're very grateful to be at 85%, understanding the challenges that everyone has, and we have the same challenges. So, yeah.
And how many times you said that you have traveled so far this year?
Oh, goodness. Let me see if I can remember. In January, I was in Turkey. In February, I was in the States on a Share trip. In March, I was in Hungary and Rwanda. And then
And somewhere else.
I was in Kyrgyzstan. I was in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. And then and then I can't remember. I was in Croatia. I was in Germany.
I guess that was it.
Yeah, I think that's it. And then we're in the States. Yeah.
So, as you know, travel is expensive. So, and support is at 85%. So if you feel led to give a gift, become a monthly supporter, or to make a one-time gift to help with travel needs, you can scan the QR code or go into the link to learn about them and click on give. Any gift would be an amazing contribution to continue the work that they're doing overseas and in the US in this day and age. So tell me now, as we close in on our time, how can people pray for you both personally and professionally?
Go ahead.
I think personally, for me, I would say, pray for our kids, our grandkids, and just, yeah, I'm coming to the point in my career as a mom where our youngest is about to be done, and I'm not really sure what God has next for me. So just some clarity and, what do I do after I'm not a full-time mom anymore?
Yeah, that's a good one, I guess, for both of us, dealing with empty nests next year. We also have a son who's getting married in a month.
Wow.
So we'll be in Minnesota at a wedding, so you can pray for that couple. And just for our time here in the States, we were here last summer in more of a connecting with churches and supporters. With the birth of our twin grandsons and our son getting married, we came back this summer and said, this is going to be family summer. So we're really just going to spend time with our kids and grandkids. And so we're looking forward to that. And so just pray for our time to be restful and just a good time with the boys and girls, and get us back home safe at the end of July.
Professionally?
Oh, professionally. Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, Share has a lot of needs. The demands for what we do is far exceeding our supply. And so if you know anyone, as I mentioned, in that children's team lead, conference coordinator, or educational specialist, I'd love to talk to them and see. I'd love to have them come be a part of our conferences or be a part of mission conferences. Again, you don't have to come to all of them. You don't have to be full time. We just really need some dedicated, qualified educational specialists to come serve our families.
So if you're out there, you've noted the prayer request, so please be praying. If you want to connect with the Chumbleys, the email address is located on their ministry profile, so you can see that in the chat or scan the QR code. If you are a church and you're hearing this, and you have some short-term teams or some ability to help out with some going over there or sending or even short-term stuff, again, email is located in their ministry profile. I want to thank you two for joining.
Thank you.
Do stay on though, but I want to thank you two for joining. It was great hearing, especially about the worship of Jedi. That is just going to stick with me for a while. But thank you for sharing everything, sharing this, the stories, what you do. It sounds like some amazing ministry work going on. For those of you who are out there, if you're seeing this and the live stream is done and you still have questions, well, you can put comments in the chat, and we welcome those, and we see them and we respond to them pretty quickly. It might be quicker if you sent your comments and questions directly to Terry and Robin via their email in their ministry profile. There is no live stream next week, but we do have another live stream coming up. We're going to be focusing on long-term missions with a retiree who's going to share what it's like to what it was like to serve overseas, to raise support in a much earlier time. And you can hear the lessons. It'll be more personal. So I hope you'll join us then. Thank you everyone for joining, and see you at the next live stream.